Namaste, friends. India has fought many wars in its history. The first one came right after independence when India had to fight against Pakistan in 1947 to 1949. After that, 3 more wars happened in 1965, 1971, and 1999. Each time, India emerged victorious under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, Lal Bahadur Shastri, Indira Gandhi, and Atal Bihari Vajpayee. But amid all these victories, there was one war that India lost: the Indo-China War of 1962. A war between the 2 biggest nations in Asia, the impact of which is still visible in India-China relations today. But why did this war happen? What led to this devastating defeat? Let's dive deep into this story. The year 1949 was a turning point. China's Communist Party won the Civil War, and Mao Zedong became the leader of the newly established China. Meanwhile, just 2 years earlier, in 1947, India had gained independence from British rule, with Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru becoming its first prime minister. That historic speech still echoes in our memories. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom. At that time, there was no hostility between India and China. In fact, both nations had reasons to be friends. In 1954, Nehru visited Beijing and received a grand welcome. If you look at the old photos, you'll see how warmly China greeted him. The reason was simple. Both countries had suffered under Western imperialist powers. If India and China united, the influence of the West could be reduced. Nehru and Mao had a 4-hour-long discussion. Mao emphasized how both Eastern nations had been oppressed by Western forces and how they needed to stand together. Nehru agreed, saying that if India and China joined hands, their combined population and strength would make a massive impact on the world. This meeting gave rise to the famous slogan, Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, India and China are brothers. At that time, both nations had minor border disputes, but they decided to avoid conflicts. In June 1954, they signed a crucial agreement called the Sino-India Panchsheel Agreement, based on 5 principles. Respect each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Avoid interfering in each other's internal affairs. Maintain mutual non-aggression. Work for each other's benefit. Most importantly, ensure peaceful coexistence. Everything seemed peaceful on the surface, but a major problem was brewing in the background. In 1950, Mao Zedong invaded Tibet. India was against this, but couldn't do much. By 1954, when Nehru signed the peace agreement with China, he compromised on Tibet, believing it was the practical thing to do because India had bigger geopolitical concerns. At the time, Pakistan was becoming a growing threat, especially since it had allied with the US due to the Cold War. Nehru wanted India to remain neutral between the US and the Soviet Union, but Pakistan's alliance with America made it more powerful. And Nehru believed that maintaining a friendship with China was crucial for India's national security. But was this decision wise, or was it the beginning of a bigger disaster? The forward policy, a dangerous gamble. Nehru adopted a forward policy, believing that increasing India's military presence along the border would make China back off. But this assumption was wrong. For Mao Zedong, India's move was not just a strategy, it was a challenge. He saw it as an aggressive act in a geopolitical chess game. As India built more military outposts, China responded with force. By 1960, diplomatic talks were ongoing, but tensions on the ground were worsening. By 1961 to 62, border clashes had increased. India thought it was protecting its territory, while China believed India was intruding into its regions. The situation had reached a boiling point. Then came 1962, the most crucial year in India-China relations. In October 1962, China officially launched war. The Chinese army attacked Indian troops in several border areas near Tibet and Arunachal Pradesh. India's forward policy was met with a full-scale Chinese assault. From Ladakh to Arunachal Pradesh, Chinese forces systematically pushed back Indian troops. And within just a month, on November 20th, 1962, China declared victory. This became one of the most significant military setbacks in Indian history. Nehru later admitted, "We thought China wouldn't attack, but we were wrong." This war was a geopolitical shock, forcing India to rethink its security policies. China took control of Aksai Chin, and to this day, the issue remains unresolved. But this wasn't just a military battle. It was a lesson for India. It proved that friendship alone cannot protect a nation. Military strength and strategic planning are equally important. After 1962, India heavily invested in its defense modernization.